Yeah.
Hello, Francine. Pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Can you hear me well?
Yes, I can hear you terrifically.
Fantastic. Great to have you. Francine, you are a partner with Dorda Lawyers in Vienna. You're the head of the life science practice. So I am assuming the series is called Negotiation in Action because a lot of action is going on at the moment globally on the world stage of negotiation. I'm imagining you are plenty busy in this time as well. So thank you again for your time. I was wondering if I could ask you if you would be willing to share a couple of insights into what your work encompasses at the moment, what kind of negotiations you're in and how these are playing out at the moment.
Yeah. Everybody's renegotiating everything at the moment, it seems like. So it starts with the supply chain. I'm lucky enough to be working with an industry that actually has more to do than it usually has, not the other way around, but which is also a crisis in its own because they're not used to having that. The supply chain isn't used to handling all the volume they have at the moment. And they also have, so supply chain renegotiations are being done quite a lot now, especially regarding pricing. Of course, suppliers are using these days to renegotiate the prices that they have. There's also a lot of companies in pharmaceutical and medical device industry thinking about relocating at least part of their production again, because what they did see in the crisis now is that they're all very reliant on Chinese and Indian suppliers, and if China and India closes down or locks down to a certain extent as they did or are doing, they're having difficulties getting the product back to Europe. Plus, then you've got also the negotiation power of the US in these countries, which also leads to the US rerouting medical devices and pharmaceuticals to the US and not allowing them to come to Europe, actually. So you actually see the power play of the US in this industry very strongly. And then you go negotiation power that they're using at the moment. And Europe really has to step up its game on these things because otherwise in crisis situations like at the moment, we're coming second to the US and getting things like, medical gloves, masks, the pharmaceutical, which against malaria, which they're using now in Europe. Actually, the US didn't want to, Trump himself wouldn't allow it to leave the country. We had to negotiate with the US to get it out. Then things that are also happening, negotiations with the health authorities, for example, for medications that are being used against COVID. How is it allowed to come into the country? Then it might not have the authorization it needs. How can you renegotiate the legal terms? Companies donating things into the health system. Are you allowed to donate? How much are you going to donate? How is that going to work? And all that in a very short space of time. So there's everything is moving at the moment. And on the other hand, of course, also huge supply chain issues where you can't get the product you need, not in the time you need. People, companies also using this time to get out of contracts they might not have liked for a while, using it as leverage to get out. But it's also it has its dangers at the moment because, of course, you might use this time to get out of a contract and renegotiate a price. Of course, you've got leverage at the moment because the time spans are short, decisions need to be made, deliveries need to be made. But what does that mean for the long term? Because the crisis will, at some stage, end. Things will go back, more or less back to normal. And I do think, and that's what I'm discussing with clients quite a bit, also from a strategic point of view, relationships that worked well in a crisis will keep on working and will be reliable partners in the future. So if yes, I can try and get the best out of everybody at this moment because everybody's, in a hard spot. But it might not be the best idea, even if it's legally possible at the moment. So I think there's a huge difference at the moment between what might legally be possible and what is a good negotiation standpoint in your negotiations, and what's the goal you actually want to reach in the long term.
Wow. So from everything that's going on, the subject matter might be logistics, it might be price, it might be policy from everything you've been saying, but the overarching umbrella is what is the relationship going to look like going forward, because we will be seeing each other after this crisis as well. And all of these aspects are in a way new and newly combined, and it's in their complexity. Do you have any tips for dealing with these complexities? What are some of your go-to negotiation tips now for these very challenging moments?
I think it's always the first step you always need to do is to find out, I'm a lawyer, of course, but to find out, what am I allowed to do? Now, contractually, legally, just to know in which sort of a space can I move? What's the maximum I can possibly get out of this negotiation? And then in the second step, to go back to what I said beforehand, what sort of a relationship do I want to have to this company in the long term? Is it somebody I will need for a long period of time? Might it be a good idea to tell them this is what would be possible, but I'm only going to take about a half or whatever, because I want to have a good relationship with you going forward. And I think you can win a lot out of that for years and years to come if you've shown to be somebody reliable, somebody who might, give you a chance in a situation like that. And I've also got very large companies who are saying, I'm not going after monies that are owed to me by smaller suppliers, for example, at the moment, because I'm going to need them afterwards. I want to have a good relationship with them, so I'm going to help them because I'm huge. I'm going to help them get through this time. But part of that is, of course, also telling them that you're doing that, telling them that you're helping them, and hoping to get a payback on that moving forward.
Build up brownie points and goodwill.
That's right.
It's really about this balance between, because the first thought is, what can I get out of this? What is my BATNA in negotiator speak? What's my best alternative, and how far can I push it if I wanted to? But then really taking a step back and looking into, what is my goal in this negotiation? What should the long-term relationship look like?
And usually it won't be the best idea to get the maximum out of my negotiation from a monetary point of view or from a legal point of view. I think it really has to be the long-term relationship. And of course, in a crisis like this, like in personal relationships, you see which relationships work well and which don't, which I think is a positive of a crisis, because you really see which companies work well, which companies have figured out how to move forward in a crisis like that, which companies are trying to help smaller suppliers also survive, who are good to their employees. There are a lot of things coming out in this stage where you can really see more about the person on the other side or the company on the other side, and is that somebody I really want to work with?
It's like they say with people, you can only see diamonds once you apply pressure. So this This might actually be the moment to find out who your true allies are and build even stronger relationships than we had before. And I actually love that as a final conclusion here. I'm very much aligned with you. Use this chance to build stronger relationships as far as you can, and keep balancing the two thoughts of how much can I get out of my potential position of power now, but how much can I look into the future and see how my relationships will affect where I am going, where you are going over the long run.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time, Francine. This has been highly interesting. All the best. Stay safe.
I will try. You too.
Take care. Bye-bye.
See you soon. Bye.